Welcome back to the YouTube channel Next in Line. Today in this video, we're going to be talking about primary feathers and secondary feathers, and then we're also going to be doing flu fletchings as well as regular fletchings. So if you're new to this and you don't know what a flu arrow is, it's something that spirals. So if you've ever tied a fly and you've wrapped feathers around your fly, it's similar to that with arrows. So it's going to spiral around your arrow shaft and it'll create wind resistance so you don't lose arrows if you're shooting at game in the air, or if you're just shooting in the woods, you won't lose as many arrows because it'll create wind resistance and stop that arrow from traveling. So I have two feathers here and they're both from a turkey, and this is a primary feather and this is a secondary feather. And so the primaries on a turkey, on their wing, are gonna sit kind of, if this was a turkey wing, the primaries are gonna be up here, and the secondary feathers are gonna be here on them. And so the secondary feathers we're gonna use for our flu arrow, and the primary feathers we're gonna use for our fletchings. The reason for that is this is a little bit thicker, and it'll make less noise than this, and it'll just work better. So I'm gonna show you how to make an original fletching, not a flu first. And so we're going to be creating a pattern from a fletching. I just have a regular fletching that's store-bought, and I've made a pattern off of that. And I'll show you how to do that. So take a pen, and then you're just going to trace it. You do want to make sure that this side and this side are going to extend the actual the shaft of the feather. So the hard point, not the actual feather part, is going to extend a little bit so that you can glue it down and tie some thread around it just to secure it. And so I'm just going to trace this, and I'm going to extend that a little bit just so I have something that I can tie down to my shaft. So once I have that traced, I'm just going to take a strip of duct tape. You can use other tape if you have. You can also do this on cardboard and then cut that out, but this is what I like to do, is take a strip of duct tape, make sure that it's going to cover the length of your tracing, and then you're simply just going to put the duct tape right on the back of your tracing. And then you're gonna just cut that out with scissors, and that'll just make it a little bit harder of a stencil than paper would be. So I forgot scissors, but I'm just gonna use a pocket knife, and this will give you a general idea, and I think I can actually do a decent job with the knife. So before we tape our template onto the feather, we're going to need to cut it in half. I'm going to take the lower half of this off, or the lower part of this. And so from here, we're just going to split this down the middle. And you'll want to try to keep it closer to the feather side than to the non-feather side in the middle. And that'll just save you some work a little bit later on. And I just use a pocket knife. I found that when I use scissors, it can sometimes just break the feather in a way that you don't want it. So I think a pocket knife is easiest for this. And then I just keep working my way up until I get all the way up. Okay, so next we're ready to put our template on the feather, and so we'll just tape it right down, and I'm just going to use the tape that we didn't use already, and I just have some strips that I cut off of some of the tape from our template that was unused. And so I'm just going to tape it right down to that shaft, make sure that it's secure all the way up and all the way down. And you want some of this to be around on the back as well. This is just to secure it. And the reason that I split the feather before I put this on is because it allows the shaft to be more flexible to match, so that way I can butt it up against my template. Where before I cut it, there's kind of a natural curve and it can be hard to butt my template right up against that shaft. So next, I'm just going to take some more tape, and I would do this with Scotch tape, but I'm going to do it with duct tape because that's what I have right now. And I've done it before and it works fine with duct tape, but it's a little harder to get off it then. And now I'm just going to tape this on the back of my feather on the template, over the template. My reason for that is because that is going to hold the feather together instead of trying to separate as I'm cutting. And that'll just help you get a cleaner cut. And if I were you, I would do this with scissors, but that's all I have. We're already here, so I'm not able to go back and get my scissors. So I just got finished cutting out my template, so I'm just going to take off what we just cut. And then we'll just begin by taking the tape off of our feather. And remember to leave that shaft longer than the actual fletching, because we're going to use string to glue that and to secure that onto the shaft. And it can be a little shorter than that even. And we'll do the same on the front. We'll leave it a little longer than we actually want it. So once you have your fletching cut out, if you have an arrow clamp, you can use an arrow clamp, but I just use a door hinge because I didn't want to spend the money on an arrow clamp. And I just put it in my door hinge, and then I take sandpaper and I just sand that pith off and I get it straight. And that'll help in the gluing process. And I just sand it right down. And not necessarily all the way down, but I just get it straight and cleaned up. So that way it'll sit flush on my arrow shaft. And you're going to obviously need to take more off of the lower section of your fletching because there's going to be more pith on it and more of the feather shaft. So another thing you'll need to keep in mind is when you're cutting these, there will be a little bit more feather shaft down here, meaning that it's wider, not just that it's wider down low, but it'll be wider this way. So I'll even clean this up with my knife and just make it a little bit thinner going this way. And let me show you how I do that. So I'm just gonna go a little bit to the side of the feathers, and I'm just gonna push down. And I just do little incisions. I don't try to run my knife along it. I try to kind of just connect the dots, where I just poke little dots and it splits it pretty nicely. And so I'll just keep doing that, and then it just splits really nice. And then once I've got my dots poked, then I'll kind of run my knife down through. I'll just work it up until where I think it gets center, and you can pull it a little bit. But I'd be careful doing this too, because I've split some fletchings in half by doing that. So once I got that done, then I'll make sure that it's sanded below here. And once I'm done with that, your fletching is ready to be glued on. So now we're gonna move on to the flu feather. And this is a lot easier. I actually enjoy doing flus. They're super easy to glue on. They take a lot less precision. It's just nice to do. So we're just gonna take a secondary feather and we're just gonna split it right up the middle, and we're gonna go the full length minus about right here. We'll cut off. But other than that, we'll go as far up as we can get it to split. So I'm gonna cut it about right here, because there's kind of this fuzzy stuff. We don't want any of that fuzzy stuff. So wherever that ends, I'm just gonna cut it and get rid of that. And then there's this nice natural crease in the turkey feather. And I'm just gonna follow that all the way up. So when you get towards the top, it gets pretty thin. So just be really careful when trying to split this, because you do want it to go the full length. Yeah, right there. I'm just gonna cut it off right there. Or I'll try to pull it apart and see if it comes. Okay, so it stopped right here, so I'm just gonna cut this off. So on your flu fletching, down lower, there's gonna be a lot more material spreading out from it. So we're gonna wanna try to cut up here and also on this side and just make that a whole lot thinner. And that'll just help as we're flexing it and bending it around the arrow shaft. So I'm just gonna start low and go close, but not too close to the actual feather part. I'm gonna start cutting this feather shaft. I'm just gonna work my way up. So now I'm just gonna do that to that same thing to this side. So now I'm just gonna take the flu fletching that we just did. I'm gonna put it in my door hinge. I'm gonna do exactly what we did to the last fletching. And I'm just gonna sand it down. And this one we want pretty thin because we need it to be really flexible. It's gonna have to flex around the arrow shaft. So go pretty thin, work it down, and just sand all the way up. And obviously you'll have to take less material off towards the top and more down low. And if you find that you didn't do a super good job cutting the side of it off, you can just sand it from the side down here and get that a little bit smaller and a little bit smoother. So once you've cut the feather shafts down and then you've sanded them, you're ready to glue them onto your arrow shaft. Remember to like and subscribe, and in the next video we're going to be talking about gluing the fletchings onto our arrows.